Hayes was sleeping when the lights came. The 12-year-old boy lay in his bed in the small farmhouse outside Missoula, Montana, dreaming about the fishing trip he planned with his grandfather. His room was dark except for the stars visible through the window. Everything was quiet and normal. Then the sky turned red. Woke to a sound like nothing he had ever heard before. It was not thunder. It was not a plane. It was a sound that made his bones vibrate and his teeth hurt. He sat up in bed and looked toward the window. His room was filled with a red glow that pulsed slowly, getting brighter and then dimmer over and over. The boy got out of bed and walked to the window. What he saw made his heart stop. 3 silver ships hung in the air above the farmhouse. They were not round or shaped like anything from the movies he watched. They looked wrong, like something that did not belong in the sky above Montana. The ships were smooth and angular, and they seemed to bend light around them in strange ways. Tried to move, but his body would not listen. His hands were shaking. He opened his mouth to scream for his parents, but no sound came out. The red light from the ships was getting stronger. His eyes started to close even though he was trying to keep them open. Then he heard something that made him forget his fear for just a moment. It was Bristle. The honey badger was awake in the corner of his room, where the animal always slept in a soft bed that's grandfather had brought for him. Bristle was making a low sound in his throat, a warning growl that had heard only once before, when a coyote had gotten too close to the barn. Bristle was small, no more than 3 feet long, with a stocky body covered in thick fur that was black and white. His claws were long and sharp, and his eyes were bright and fierce. The honey badger had come to the farmhouse 3 years ago, after his grandfather had traveled to Africa and rescued the animal from a poacher's trap. Most people thought it was crazy to keep a honey badger as a pet, but Bristle had bonded in a way that was hard to explain. The honey badger got out of his bed and walked too. The animal pushed his head against the boy's leg and felt some of his fear go away. He reached down and put his hand on Bristle's head. The honey badger's fur was warm, and the animal's body was shaking just like Swaz. The red light filled the room completely now, could not see anything except the red glow. He felt the heat on his skin and his head began to pound. His vision started to go dark around the edges. He was falling, or maybe the floor was disappearing. He did not know which one it was. Then the sound changed. The vibration that had been hurting his teeth became softer. He realized that meant something was happening downstairs. His parents were in the house. His mother, Lisa, and his father, Tom, were sleeping in the master bedroom down the hall. They would wake up. They would come to help him. But knew, somehow, that they would not be able to help. Something about this was different from anything his parents could handle. The door to his room opened. The boy had not heard anyone open it. It just opened, and 2 tall figures stepped inside. They were not human, could see that immediately. Their skin was gray and smooth like plastic. Their heads were larger than human heads, and their eyes were huge and black like a bug's eyes. They wore clothes that looked like they were made from metal, but the metal moved like water when they walked. Tried to run, but his legs would not move. The red light was holding him still. He could see that much now, even though his eyes were closing again. The light had texture to it. It was pushing on him like an invisible hand. The 2 aliens walked toward him. They made sounds that were not words, high-pitched clicking and whistling sounds that made skin crawl. One of them reached out an arm that was too long and too thin, and its hand had too many fingers. That was when Bristle attacked. The honey badger moved so fast that barely saw what was happening. One moment Bristle was standing next to the boy, and the next moment the animal was flying through the air toward the closest alien. The honey badger's claws came out, long and sharp and deadly looking. Bristle sank his teeth into the alien's arm, right where the thin hand connected to the wrist. The alien made a sound that was different from the other sounds, a high shriek of pain and surprise. It pulled its arm back, and Bristle held on, shaking the alien's arm like it was a toy. The second alien tried to grab Bristle, but the honey badger let go and rolled backward, then came up attacking again, this time going for the legs of the second alien. The red light wavered. Just for a second it became weaker. That was enough. Could move. He could feel the control releasing him. The alien with the hurt arm was backing away from Bristle, and the second alien was trying to protect itself from the honey badger's relentless attack. Did not think, he just moved. He ran for the door and pushed past the aliens. They were busy with Bristle, trying to defend themselves from an animal they did not understand. In all their training and all their advanced technology, they had never expected to face a creature like a honey badger. They had weapons designed for human resistance, but a small earth animal with thick skin and pain tolerance that could fight through anything was something their weapons could not easily handle. Ran down the hallway. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of the fight continuing. Bristle was growling and hissing, and the aliens were making their shrieking sounds. Did not stop to help. He could not help. Instead, he ran down the stairs and toward the back door. The farmhouse was filled with red light. Could see his parents lying on the living room floor unmoving. They were not dead. Could see them breathing. The harmonic frequencies that the alien ships were using had simply put them into a deep sleep. Wanted to stop and check on them, but he knew he did not have time. He ran to the back door and pulled it open. The night air hit his face, cold and real. Behind him, inside the house, he heard Bristle making a noise that sounded like pain. The honey badger was still fighting, but knew Bristle would not last long against alien weapons. Jumped off the back porch and ran toward the forest that surrounded the and Bristle spent 3 days in the Montana wilderness before they saw another human being. The forest was thick with pine trees and old growth. The ground was covered with pine needles and moss. There was water from the creek that ran down the mountain, cold and clean. There were berries on the bushes, dark purple and sweet. It was enough to keep them alive. Bristle had found in the darkness that first night. The honey badger had caught up with him about 2 miles from the farmhouse after the aliens had pulled back. Bristle was injured. One of his back legs was hurt from a weapon strike, and there was a burn mark on his shoulder. But the honey badger moved, and he did not complain. He just stayed close to, and they walked deeper into the forest together. They walked for hours that first night. Did not know where he was going. He just knew that he had to keep moving, that staying still meant the aliens would find him. Bristle walked beside him, limping but determined. When finally collapsed from exhaustion, Bristle lay down beside him and they slept under a fallen tree, hidden and safe. The next 3 days were difficult. Clothes tore on branches. His shoes wore through and his feet got cut and bloody. He was hungry most of the time, even after eating the berries. He was scared every moment, listening for sounds of the ships overhead, for the strange, high-pitched sounds the aliens made. But Bristle was always there. The honey badger seemed to know where the good water was, and he would lead to it. When was too tired to move, Bristle would curl up against him, keeping him warm through the cold nights. The animal's warmth was real and solid, and it helped keep going when he wanted to give up. On the 3rd day, Bristle found the hunting cabin. It was old, made from wooden logs that had turned gray from age and weather. The door was held shut by a chain and a padlock, but the lock was rusty and broken. Was able to pull the chain out of the wood, and the door opened. Inside, the cabin was dusty but dry. There were old blankets and a small stove. There was a cabinet with some cans of food inside, old and dented but sealed. Opened a can of beans with a piece of metal he found, and he shared them with Bristle. They were the best thing had eaten in days. Was sitting on the floor eating the beans when he heard the footsteps outside. His heart jumped. He grabbed Bristle and pulled the honey badger close. Bristle started to growl, ready to fight again, but whispered to him to stay quiet. A man appeared in the doorway. He was tall and thin, with a sun-weathered face and gray hair. He wore a ranger uniform, faded and worn from years of use. His name was Jake, and he was the forest ranger who covered this area of the national forest. Jake stopped in the doorway when he saw Bristle. He did not come inside. He just looked at them, his eyes taking in the torn clothes, the dirt on skin, the injured honey badger. Jake was not stupid. He could see that something bad had happened to this boy. "My name is Jake," he said in a quiet voice. "I am not going to hurt you, I just want to help." Was afraid, but something in Jake's voice made him believe the man. Maybe it was the way Jake looked at Bristle with respect instead of fear. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes. Did not know, but he decided to trust Jake. Jake brought Bristle to his own cabin about 3 miles away. It was a better cabin with electricity and running water. Jake had food and medicine. He cleaned his feet and wrapped them carefully. He looked at Bristle's injuries and cleaned them too, speaking gently to the honey badger while he worked. Told Jake everything. He told him about the ships, about the aliens, about how Bristle had saved him. At first, Jake listened but said nothing. Then Jake told that he believed him. "I believe you," Jake said, "because I saw one of those ships 3 weeks ago. I was checking a remote part of the forest and I saw something that should not have been there. A ship, just like you described. It was there for maybe 10 minutes and then it was gone. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't tell anyone because nobody would have believed me." Jake had a brother named who worked in information technology in the city of Billings. Worked with computers and networks, the kind of work that involved accessing information from many different places. Jake called that night and agreed to come to the cabin. Arrived the next day, driving up the mountain road in a truck. He was younger than Jake, maybe 35 years old, with black hair and smart eyes that looked like he had seen a lot of strange things in his time. Worked in the kind of job that meant he understood how information moved through the world. Talked to for a long time. He asked questions about the aliens, about the ships, about everything he'd seen and heard. Took notes on a small computer, typing everything down. When was finished, sat back and his face was serious. "I believe you," said, "because I have been finding encrypted messages in dark places on the internet. Messages about missing people, people who vanished without explanation. Messages about lights in the sky. Messages about someone or something coming down from space and taking people away. I thought they were crazy conspiracy theories, but now I think they might be real." Spent the next week in Jake's cabin. He used his computer to search through networks and messages, looking for patterns. He found hundreds of missing person reports that did not connect to anything obvious. He found dark web messages from people claiming to have witnessed abductions. He found encrypted transmissions that talked about specimen collection and genetic evaluation. Made contact with a woman through encrypted channels. Her name was, but everyone called her Pat. Pat was a former military intelligence officer who had been tracking what she believed was extraterrestrial activity for 15 years. Pat had documented the disappearances of dozens of people, all of them with certain qualities in common. They all had high intelligence. They all had special cognitive abilities. They all seemed to have been selected by something. Pat agreed to come to the cabin. She arrived with information that shocked everyone. Pat had evidence that an alien species called they had been visiting Earth for at least 300 years. They had been studying humans, watching them, learning about them. And more recently, they had begun taking selected humans away for purposes nobody fully understood. Felt something break inside him when he heard this. It was not just about him anymore. It was about all the other people who had disappeared. It was about the fact that his world was much larger and much more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But Bristle was there, warm against his leg, reminding that he was not alone. And Jake and Pat were there too, willing to believe him, willing to help him, willing to stand against something they did not fully understand. Pat arrived at the safe house in Helena late on a Thursday evening. The house was located in the older part of the city, away from the main roads, tucked between two other houses that blocked it from view. Pat was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She moved like someone who was used to danger, who understood that every moment could bring a threat. Was nervous about meeting Pat. He did not know this woman, and he had already learned that trusting people could be dangerous. But when Pat sat down across from him in the safe house living room, she looked at him with an expression of such raw understanding that felt some of his fear ease away. "I have been chasing ghosts for 15 years, Pat said. "I have talked to people who saw things they could not explain. I have read reports that nobody else believed. I have spent time in military intelligence tracking signals and movements that did not make sense. And I have been waiting for proof, waiting for someone like you." Pat had brought files with her, physical copies printed on paper because paper could not be hacked or traced. There were photographs of missing people, documents from police reports, records of disappearances that had never been solved. There were maps with dots marked on them, showing where the abductions had happened. Most of the dots were concentrated in remote areas, places where people would not be quickly missed, places where ships could come and go without being seen by too many witnesses. "The Empire is a civilization that exists millions of miles from Earth," Pat explained. "They are intelligent. They are advanced in technology. They have been coming to our planet for hundreds of years, but we have never been able to stop them. We did not even know they were here." Was taking notes on his computer while Pat talked. Jake sat next to, his presence calm and steady. Bristle was in the corner, his injury healing well. The honey badger watched Pat with intelligent eyes, as if the animal understood that this woman was bringing important information. "The look at humanity the way we might look at insects," Pat continued. "They see us as primitive. They see us as tools or experiments. They have been selecting certain humans for a program called the Cognitive Extraction Initiative. The goal is to take humans with specific neural patterns and use them for experimentation. They believe they can unlock hidden psychic abilities in the human mind." Felt cold when he heard this. He thought about his home, about his parents lying on the floor, unconscious. He thought about all the other people on Pat's list, taken away by the aliens, probably never to be seen again. Why me? Asked. What was special about me? Your neural patterns, Pat said, pulling out another file. This one contained medical records, including notes from school and from a doctor who had examined him when he was younger. You have what we call a gifted brain. Your pattern recognition abilities are exceptional. Your cognitive flexibility is higher than average. Your parents brought you to a doctor for testing when you were younger because they wanted to understand why you were so intelligent. That testing created records. They scan Earth's digital systems constantly. They found your records. They determined that you were a prime specimen for their experiments. But I failed, Pat said, leaning forward. That is the important part. You failed their mission. You escaped. And not because you were given an advanced weapon or secret technology. You escaped because you had something they did not predict. You had a loyal companion who refused to let you be taken. Pat pulled out photographs of the farmhouse. The images showed the alien ships hovering above, showed the burn marks on the house, showed evidence of a violent confrontation. But there were also images from security footage, collected from nearby properties. The images showed a small dark shape, moving fast, attacking the alien soldiers. This is Bristle, Pat said, pointing at the honey badger. An Earth animal, a creature that they have no experience with. They have studied humans for centuries, but they have never studied our animals. They did not expect an Earth creature to resist so fiercely. They did not expect pain tolerance and aggression in something so small, and because they did not expect it, their weapons did not work effectively against it. Bristle stood up and walked over to, resting his head on the boy's knee. Put his hand on the honey badger's back, feeling the warmth of the animal's body, the solid reality of it. The aliens will come back, Pat said. They will not accept failure, but what happened at your farmhouse has changed something important. It has shown us a weakness in the understanding. They believe they are superior because they have better technology, but they do not understand adaptation. They do not understand the unpredictability of Earth life. Pat explained her plan. She wanted to protect, but more than that, she wanted to prepare. She wanted to build a network of people who understood what they were doing, who could identify other abduction targets and protect them, who could gather intelligence about the aliens and their plans. I cannot fight them with weapons, Pat said. They would win that fight every time, but I can fight them with information. I can fight them by preventing them from taking more humans, and I can fight them by proving to them and to the world that humans are not the weak prey they think we are. Spoke up. I can set up secure communication networks. I can monitor for unusual activity. I can connect with other people on the dark web who have been tracking this. Jake nodded. I can help coordinate protection in the field. I know this region, and I know other people who can be trusted. Looked at all of them, at these adults who had decided to believe him, who had decided to stand with him against something that seemed impossible to fight. He thought about his parents, probably awake now and desperately trying to find him. He thought about the other missing people on Pat's list, the ones who had not been so lucky as to escape. What do you want me to do? Asked. Pat smiled, and it was not a soft smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally found what she had been looking for. I want you to stay alive, Pat said. I want you to help us understand I want you to become the first human who has successfully resisted their abduction program and lived to tell about it. And I want you to help me make sure that no other human child gets taken away for their experiments. The meeting lasted until midnight. Pat laid out her plan in detail. She explained how the network would function, how they would communicate, how they would identify other targets before they could take them. She talked about establishing an agency, something that could track extraterrestrial activity and alert governments to the threat. But more than anything, Pat talked about. She made it clear that the boy was not going to be treated as a victim or a weakness to be hidden away. Was going to be treated as a witness and as a survivor. Was going to be the proof that humanity could resist the aliens, that humans were not the primitive, predictable creatures they believed them to be. By the time Pat was finished talking, understood. He was not running anymore. He was standing. And he was standing with others who believed in him, who understood the danger and who were willing to face it together. The attack came at 3 in the morning. Was awake, as he often was now, troubled by nightmares of red light and alien faces. He was sitting by the window when he saw the first flash of light across the sky. Then the safe house shook. The alien weapons struck the building with precision. The front wall exploded inward, sending pieces of wood and concrete flying through the living room. Alarms started to sound. Pat was already moving, pulling toward the back of the house. Jake came down the stairs with weapons that Pat had arranged to have brought to the safe house. Was at his computer, typing frantically, trying to send out the message that they had prepared for exactly this moment. "Go," Pat shouted at. "Go now, get to the basement." But did not want to go. He wanted to stay and fight. He was tired of running. He was tired of being the one who needed protection. He was 12 years old, and he understood that the only thing that mattered now was that the people around him did not die because of him. Bristle was already moving. The honey badger did not hesitate. He did not ask what to do. The moment the first explosion happened, Bristle knew that this was combat, and combat was something he understood. The animal moved like he had been born to fight, which, in a way, he had been. Honey badgers on Earth did not back down from anything, no matter how much bigger or more powerful the threat was. Ran down into the basement with Bristle close behind. The basement was reinforced, built as a fallback position. Pat had been planning for this attack for months. The walls were thick concrete. There were supplies and weapons stored there. Most importantly, there was a tunnel that led out of the house, connecting to the house next door. From above, could hear the sounds of combat. The aliens were using energy weapons that made a sound like crackling electricity. Pat and Jake were returning fire with conventional weapons that now seemed so small and useless compared to the technology they possessed. But conventional weapons could still hurt, and they could still kill if used correctly. His voice came through a small radio that had been given. "The message is sent. The entire internet is lighting up with the story. News is spreading. Helicopters are already coming. They are going to see them." Pat had planned this carefully. She had contacts in media, in government, in military intelligence. The moment the aliens attacked was going to send out everything they had. Photographs of the ships, video footage from S farmhouse, documents about the abductions, messages about everything that Pat had spent 15 years gathering. All of it would go public at once. The theory was that the aliens could operate in secret, but they could not operate if the entire world was watching. They could kidnap people if nobody knew what was happening, but they could not kidnap someone if cameras and helicopters and news crews were surrounding the location. Bristle moved back and forth in the basement, agitated but not scared. The honey badger kept looking at the stairs that led up to the main floor, as if wanting to go back up and join the fight. Held the animal back, keeping a hand on Bristle's shoulder. "Stay with me," whispered to the honey badger. "We need to stay safe for now." But staying safe was becoming harder. The sounds from above were getting louder. Could hear the crashing of the building falling apart. He could hear Pat shouting orders. He could hear Jake coughing from smoke. It sounded like the alien attack was unstoppable, like nothing the humans could do would make any difference. Then something changed. Heard voices from outside, human voices, many of them. He heard the sounds of vehicles arriving. He heard someone shouting commands through a loudspeaker. His voice came through the radio again, and for the first time he sounded excited rather than afraid. "They are here. They are everywhere. Military helicopters, police vehicles, news crews. I am sending the live feed to every major news outlet. They cannot attack anymore without the whole world seeing it." The alien weapons fire began to decrease. The sounds of combat became less intense. Heard what sounded like the alien ships preparing to leave, the sound of their engines changing tone. The harmonic vibration that had made his teeth hurt before was becoming weaker. Pat's voice came through the radio. "It is working. They are pulling back. Everyone stay in position. They may be planning another attack." But the attack did not come. The ships rose higher and higher in the sky, leaving the area. Could hear the helicopters approaching, could hear the sounds of emergency vehicles, could hear the voices of many people outside the house. The basement door opened and Jake came down. The ranger was covered in dust and had a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. He looked at with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "They are leaving," Jake said. "It worked. The world is watching now. They cannot stay here anymore." Felt something release inside him, like a knot that had been tied up too tightly finally loosening. Bristle ran up the stairs, wanting to see what was happening. Followed, climbing back up to the main floor. The safe house had been damaged heavily. One wall was completely gone, open to the night air. But the building was still standing, and everyone cared about was alive. Pat was standing in the ruins of the living room, talking on a phone, her voice calm and steady as she explained to someone in government what had happened and what she knew about the extraterrestrial threat. Was at his computer, even though the computer was running on battery power now. His screen showed dozens of news channels playing the same story. A boy named Hayes, a honey badger named Bristle, an attack by alien forces, video footage of the ships leaving, photographs of the alien soldiers. It was the biggest story in the world, happening right now in real time. Pat hung up her phone and looked at. "The government wants to talk to you," Pat said. "The military wants to talk to you. The United Nations wants to talk to you. Everyone wants to know what happened." "What do we tell them?" asked. "We tell them the truth," Pat said. "We tell them that aliens have been abducting humans. We tell them that you survived because you refused to give up and because you had a loyal companion who was willing to fight for you. We tell them that Earth is no longer hidden. Earth is no longer defenseless, and that from this moment on, humanity is going to be ready for anything they try to do." Pat walked over to Bristle and knelt down in front of the honey badger. The animal allowed her to pet him, and Pat smiled. "We tell them about this animal," Pat said, looking at. "We tell them that Bristle is the reason humanity still has a chance. We tell them that humans and the creatures of Earth working together are more powerful than technology that knows no limits. We tell them that we will never again be easy prey." Outside, the world was waking up to the reality that Earth was not alone, that there were visitors from space, that young Hayes had somehow survived an encounter with an alien species and lived to tell the story. Bristle stood in the ruins of the safe house next to and looked up at the dawn breaking over Helena. The honey badger had done what seemed impossible. The small animal had stood against an advanced alien civilization and had not backed down. Now, human soldiers and police officers surrounded. 6 months had passed since the night they attacked the safe house in Helena. Hayes was no longer just a boy from Montana. He had become known around the world as the first human who had successfully escaped an alien abduction and lived to prove that extraterrestrial life existed. His name was recognized in every country. Children drew pictures of him and Bristle. Scientists wanted to study him. Governments wanted to use him as a symbol. But was still just 13 years old. The governments of the world had established what they called the Extraterrestrial Monitoring and Defense Initiative, with Pat as its director. The agency's purpose was not to prepare for war, though Pat made it clear that preparation for war was important. The real purpose was to understand to identify their patterns, to protect potential targets, and to make it clear to the galaxy that Earth would not be easy prey for anyone. Was made an advisor to the organization. His job was to talk to the scientists and military officers who wanted to understand the alien encounter, to help them understand what he had learned, and to keep them focused on what really mattered. What really mattered was finding the other abduction targets before they could take them. Pat had assigned to lead a team of computer specialists who worked to identify people with the same neural patterns that they were interested in. These people were sent warnings, offered protection, given the knowledge that they had been targeted. Some of them volunteered to help the agency. Others preferred to keep their distance, content to know that they were being watched over, that they were not alone. Jake had become the head of field operations. The ranger knew how to move through wilderness, how to survive in remote areas, how to keep people hidden and safe. He trained teams that were stationed in areas where alien activity had been detected. Their job was to respond quickly if an abduction attempt was made, to provide defense and resistance, to make sure that anyone targeted by them would not be taken without a fight. Came to Earth through secret channels. The observer who had helped during the final assault on the safe house had asked for asylum with the humans, was tired of serving an empire that he believed was wrong about humanity. He was tired of the deception, the abductions, the treatment of humans as nothing more than experimental subjects. When arrived at the agency headquarters, was nervous about meeting him face to face. Looked exactly like the aliens had feared in his nightmares. Tall, gray skin, huge black eyes, too many fingers on his hands, but was different from the others, had chosen to help, had decided that humanity was worth saving. "I apologize," said Tu, his voice making clicking and whistling sounds that had to be translated by the computers the agency had been developing. "My people have treated your species with disrespect and cruelty. This was a mistake. Your species is not primitive. Your species is not weak. Your species is remarkable." Looked at Bristle, who was now standing calmly next to the boy. The honey badger did not growl at or show any fear. Animals, had learned, were better judges of character than humans sometimes were. If Bristle trusted, then could trust him too. Provided the agency with detailed information about he explained their physiology, their weapons systems, their communications methods, their weaknesses. He revealed that the empire was divided, that there were factions within the government that disagreed about how to treat less advanced species, belonged to a faction that believed in cooperation rather than conquest. The High Council is investigating the failure of the capture operation, explained. They are debating whether humans should continue to be classified as a harvesting resource or whether your species represents something more. Because of what this animal did, many in my government are questioning our beliefs about humanity. Bristle walked over to and touched his leg with his nose. The honey badger seemed to understand that was no longer an enemy. The alien reached down slowly, carefully, and let Bristle sniff his hand. Watched as his honey badger and the alien made contact, and he understood that this moment was important. This was the moment when it became clear that cooperation was possible, even between species that had been enemies. Governments began making public announcements about the presence. The initial panic that had gripped the world was being replaced by determination and preparation. The United Nations established protocols for dealing with extraterrestrial contact. Military organizations around the world began developing new defensive strategies. Scientists started studying the information that had provided about and their technology. But more importantly, humans began to understand something that Pat had been trying to teach them. Humans were stronger than they believed. Humans were more creative and adaptable than they understood. Humans could work together, even across national and cultural boundaries, when facing a common threat. Was given the choice of returning to a normal life. His parents wanted him to go back to school to forget about aliens and the agency and the weight of the world's attention, but refused. He understood that normal was gone now. The world had changed, and he had been the one to change it. If he ran away now, if he tried to pretend that nothing had happened, then everything Bristle had done would be meaningless. Instead, worked with the agency, using his understanding of to help prepare humanity for whatever came next. He lived in the agency headquarters, in a specially designed facility that was as much home as it was a military installation. His parents visited frequently. They understood that their son had grown up in a way that other children would not. A year after the initial attack, stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly. He was 14 years old, and he was speaking to the leaders of every nation on Earth. Bristle was with him, standing calmly next to the boy as addressed the world. "I am not a soldier," said, his voice clear and strong. "I am just a boy who was chosen for capture by an alien empire. I survived because I had help. I had a loyal companion who refused to let me be taken. I had humans who believed in me and fought for me. I had a community that came together to protect someone they had never met. This is what makes humanity special. This is what they do not understand about us. We do not fight because we are strong. We fight because we care about each other. We do not win because we have better weapons. We win because we refuse to give up. And we refuse to give up because we love. We love our families. We love our communities. We love the creatures who live alongside us. And we love life itself." The assembly listened in silence. When finished, they stood and applauded. It was not the applause of approval for a military commander or a political leader. It was the applause of a species that had just realized its own strength. Bristle looked up and the boy smiled. The honey badger had done more than save life that night in the farmhouse. Bristle had saved humanity's future by refusing to accept that his small size meant he had to accept defeat. Bristle had taught humanity that true strength was not about size or technology or power. True strength was about will, loyalty, and the determination to protect what you love. 2 years after the initial contact, the High Council sent an official message to Earth. The message stated that the cosmic monitoring and classification system had been updated. Humanity was no longer listed as a Level 1 species suitable for harvesting. Humanity was now classified as a Level 4 emerging civilization with significant potential and unpredictable capabilities. The abductions stopped. The threat did not disappear completely because the universe was a large place and danger could come from many directions. But the immediate threat from them was reduced. Stood in his home, the farmhouse that his family had rebuilt, with Bristle resting beside him. The honey badger was older now, his movements slower, his wounds healed. The animal had become a symbol not just to but to all of humanity. Bristle represented the power of the individual, the strength of the small and forgotten, the importance of loyalty and courage. Looked out at the Montana landscape, at the forest where he had run that first night, at the sky where the alien ships had come. He understood that his life would never be normal. But he also understood that normal did not matter anymore. What mattered was that he and Bristle had proven something important. They had proven that humanity could stand against the darkness, that humans could face the impossible and choose not to surrender. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in human history, that uncertainty was not a cause for despair. It was a cause for hope. Because humans now knew that they were stronger than they believed, braver than they imagined, and that together with the loyalty of those they loved and the determination to protect what mattered, they could face anything the universe could throw at them. Bristle closed his eyes and rested his head against Sleg. The boy put his hand on the honey badger's back, feeling the warmth of the animal's body, the steady rhythm of the animal's breathing. Together, they had changed the world. Together, they had proven that love and loyalty were the most powerful forces in the universe, and together they would face whatever came next. The age of human vulnerability was over. The age of human strength had begun, and it had all started with one boy and one honey badger who refused to accept that they were too small to make a difference. E-House, protecting the boy and the honey badger who had changed everything, understood as he looked at Bristle that the real battle was just beginning. They would not accept defeat. They would come back. But next time, humanity would be ready. And it would be ready because of what a boy and a honey badger had done together in the darkness of a Montana farmhouse. Bristle lay across feet, sleeping peacefully. The honey badger had saved his life. Now would spend his life making sure that what Bristle had done, what Pat was planning, what Jake and all the other humans who would join them wanted to do, would mean something. It would mean that they would protect others. It would mean that humans would never again be easy prey for the age of Earth's ignorance about extraterrestrial threats was ending. And it was ending because one boy and one honey badger had refused to be captured. Realized something important in that moment. He had survived because a small animal had loved him enough to fight against overwhelming odds. And now, humans were willing to do the same thing. Bristle had taught them something about loyalty and courage. Now they were ready to use those lessons to protect and find out the truth about the aliens who wanted him dead. Farmhouse. The trees were dark shapes against the red sky. He could hear the ships above him, could hear the sound of them moving, searching. But Bristle was still fighting, still buying him time. The boy ran into the darkness of the forest, away from the red lights, away from the ships, away from everything he had ever known. Behind him, Bristle was still fighting. And somewhere in that small, fierce animal, there was a determination to protect the human child it loved, no matter what the cost.